Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Exploring the Lord of the Rings. This is session number 345. And today, after many weeks of them being coming, right there, they are coming is where we left. So the orc horde has been in the present progressive tense for quite some time here. So tonight, they will finally actually arrive and we move into the present perfect. So that is I'm really looking forward to the next couple slides. The next couple slides are both very action-packed slides, and I love how Tolkien modulates his diction when we get into action sequences. So yes, we've just we're moving forward. The troll whose foot was stabbed by Frodo, we did that last time. So I don't think we are going to have quite so many George MacDonald references here this evening as we've had with the flat, toeless troll foot. But tonight we get more combat, and in particular, a combat spotlight on Sam Gamgee. So that will be a lot of fun. Let's jump straight into the text here tonight. I'm late to class and feeling anxious to get going. So let's jump straight in here. They have come. There was a crash on the door, followed by crash after crash. Rams and hammers were beating against it. It cracked and staggered back, and the opening grew suddenly wide. Arrows came whistling in, but struck the northern wall and fell harmlessly to the floor. There was a horn blast and a rush of feet, and orcs one after another leaped into the chamber. How many there were the company could not count. The affray was sharp, but the orcs were dismayed by the fierceness of the defense. Legolas shot two through the throat. Gimli hewed the legs from under another that had sprung up on Balin's tomb. Boromir and Aragorn slew many. When 13 had fallen, the rest fled shrieking, leaving the defenders unharmed, except for Sam, who had a scratch along the scalp. A quick duck had saved him, and he had felled his orc, a sturdy thrust with his barrow blade. A fire was smoldering in his brown eyes that would have made Ted Sandyman step backwards if he had seen it. "Now's the time," cried Gandalf. "Let us go before the troll returns." Okay, so lots of things happen there. One thing that was really striking me is the particular pattern of alliteration that we can see in this. Like, notice what keeps happening here. I wasn't seeing the kind of like texture of alliteration that we've often seen, but what I do see here is little close repetitions. Things like company could not count, for instance. Legolas shot two through the throat, right? Even barrow blade, scratch along the scalp. A lot of times when there's just like two single initial phrases, or initial sounds, that get almost immediately, either almost or indeed immediately repeated. Again, not like larger patterns or textures necessarily, but those kind of quick repetitions. And you know what it makes me think of? It makes me think of fling fuel on the fire. We saw this before, right? In the wolf sequence. that he would do these kinds of, and I don't, like fling fuel on the fire, as I said at the time, I probably, I don't think that this is some kind of like huge literary statement that he's trying to make. I think, Jackie, that's exactly it. That when he picks up his pacing, he falls into this pattern. Yes, exactly. Just like the P's in your sentence there. Yeah, exactly. I think that it seems to be like a thing that his brain does when he's at this kind of pace, right? Yeah, anyway, when 13 had fallen, the rest fled, shrieking. Except for Sam, who had a scratch along the scalp. Again, fallen, fled, scratch, scalp. Yeah. Anyway, as I say, it's not, it isn't, so I don't believe that this is some kind of literary pattern. I just think that it is a thing that he does. And I don't know if there's a layer of intentionality to it. That is, whether the repeated sounds, and again, in this kind of pattern, these quick bursts of repeated sounds close together, if that just in Tolkien's ear sort of assists the frenetic pace of this kind of thing. Yeah, I agree. I think that he likes the sounds, Tatterdash, but I think that he is... Okay, so when I said I don't think that there's like some sort of like literary or perhaps I should say poetic pattern, I'm not trying to argue that he is structuring, his alliteration in ways like I did argue that he was doing in Gimli's Moria poem, where I think that we do see him shaping the pattern of the sounds there, and that really becomes a part of his poetic structure. I agree that I think it's natural for him, but again, I don't think it's unconscious. And I think that this comparison I've made many times before, right? It's just like a very intuitive musician, right? Somebody who can just play the piano and make music, right? It's not quite right to say, I think that they were they planned out this particular chord sequence or something like that, or, they really seem to favor like this note or something like it's weird when you try to analyze it on that kind of level. No, I don't think their brains were thinking in that way. But did they do that on purpose? Yes. Why did they do it though? What are they expressing by that? What does this particular chord sequence seem to express to them? Why did they reach, even if they did it instinctively in some level, why did they reach for that chord sequence here, right? On this occasion, in this particular piece? Turadel, exactly, because it felt right. Exactly. What I'm trying to do, right? So my job is to, what Tolkien does, perhaps intuitively, and because of his own native genius, I come lumbering along behind and think about, right? Because I do think you can see, like, for instance, a brilliant musician, I believe, can perceive patterns of, like, at moments like this in their music, you can see them reach for particular, chord sequences or particular, it's, you can see patterns. Like, you can begin in a sense to kind of understand their language, right? And it doesn't mean that if if we, when we're listening to it, break it down laboriously. It doesn't mean that I'm accusing them of being laborious, right, in the way that they do it. And that's the kind of thing that I'm pointing to here. I don't think that, before he wrote this second paragraph, he was sitting here scratching his head and saying, okay, how many alliterative phrases do I want, and where should I sprinkle them in? And I don't think he planned it. I think he just did it, right? But I think he did it for a reason, even if he didn't think through that reason. And that's what I want. That's what I'm trying to do, is to think, what is the effect? Yes, he thought that it sounded good, but why did he think that this sounded good here? Right? That's my question, if you see what I mean. So that's, and again, it's not that I don't even think he necessarily analyzed it, though I think that I wouldn't be surprised. At the same time, I mean, I do think that Tolkien was intuitive with these kinds of things. I think that he just had an ear for this stuff, and I'm not sure that he necessarily would have explained it at the same time. He also was very laborious, especially in his revision process, right? So even if he did not, sit down and be like, what this paragraph really needs? A bunch of short, tight alliterative phrases. Even if he didn't actually think that before he wrote this paragraph, I do not doubt that he heard it and appreciated it when reading it back and made the decision, yeah, that works. Anyway, that's, yeah, Bjorning, that's a really interesting question. Can any student of classics comment on whether the kind of Greek or Latin works Tolkien undoubtedly studied closely used the kind of sound joining that Tolkien uses in passages like these? Really, really interesting question. So, and Bjorning, one thing I will say in encouragement of that line of reasoning, it's kind of like at different times in the history of Tolkien criticism, it's been kind of fashionable to downplay Tolkien's relationship with Greek and Latin. Because, of course, Tolkien himself plays up. And not to say, I don't mean that artificially, but like he himself places so much emphasis on Old English and Old Norse and Welsh and Finnish and things like that, right? His sort of later in life language studies. And that's perfectly true. Like, again, I'm not obviously arguing that that's like wrong or inappropriate. But I have often found that Tolkien readers tend to be too quick to dismiss Latin and Greek, because it isn't just that Tolkien read classics for a year at Oxford before he shifted to philology. But, I mean, we're talking about a guy who won prizes for extemporaneous oratory in classical Greek. Like, he was in the Greek debating society at St. Edmund's School and used to be able to stand up and conduct extemporaneous debates in Greek, right? So, is it a reasonable question? Is it a reasonable question to ask if the linguistic patterns of Greek in any way influenced his ear? Yes, I think it is. Right? It was definitely in there. It's definitely part of his toolkit, right? So yes, and certainly his Latin was excellent as well. So yes, it's no, in many ways, those weren't his favorite languages, right? They weren't the ones he talked about and thought about and ended up professionally studying. But they absolutely are in his brain. And so asking, it's a really an excellent question. Eric is giving us some examples of alliteration, well, a manuscript that illustrates some alliteration in Homer. I would love to I would love to study that more. Kurtzimus, I've been doing a little bit of Koine Greek recently, in my own stumbling way. And I haven't noticed alliteration. I haven't mentioned this in ages, but I guess I should, in case any of you are interested in it. I'm conducting a weekly Bible study on 1 John, the epistle of 1 John. It won't shock you to hear that I've been working my way through 1 John for 2.5 years now, and we're still in chapter 4. So I'm going slowly, but I'm going slowly in particular because I'm spending most of my time on the Greek, and I don't know Greek. So I've been learning Greek as we've been going through, and it's been really fun. Anyway, so John doesn't seem to use alliteration that much, but anyway, sorry, it's called Students of the Word. There's a podcast feed. You can get there's a YouTube channel too. There's a YouTube channel and a podcast feed, if you're interested in that. It's a lot of fun. I talk about grammar a lot. I'm particularly fond of Greek prepositions and conjunctions. But anyway, yeah. So it's been great fun. Anyway, so yeah, I haven't come across alliteration so much. That doesn't seem to be how John's mind works. But anyway, might as well mention that, I suppose. Anyhow, however, as I say, I don't know enough about Greek poetics. So I think that this is interesting. We now have 2 sort of data points about this, the wolf fight and this fight, where this pattern seems to me noteworthy, right? I think it happens enough here. I think it happens enough here that I think we can see it as a pattern. It's beginning to look like one of those things that Tolkien often does, that it's one of, in his own particular toolkit, it does seem to be when he wants the when things are going fast, when people are talking fast, like fling fuel on the fire, or when action is happening quickly. Because I think this is definitely, I think this is not just coincidental. Company could not count. 2 through the throat. Balin's tomb, Boromir, fallen, fled, scratch along the scalp, barrow blade. Yeah. The fierceness of the defense. Yes. Good. Agreed. Because it doesn't always have to be initial consonants. Yes. Fierceness of the defense. Gildal and I would maybe even expand that to dismayed by the fierceness of the defense. DF. Right? Notice that? Dismayed by the fierceness of the defense. Yeah. And as somebody, Bjorning, you were just pointing this out. Somebody was pointing this out before too. There are some more complicated sound things that we see him doing. That first paragraph I find really interesting. We start off with the repetition, not just of, well, I was going to say not just of sounds, but of whole words, except the whole words are onomatopoetic sounds, right? So, crash, right, are of course what I'm referring to there. So the idea of sound repetition we get introduced to here at the beginning of this paragraph, right? However, look at the next sentence. Rams and hammers, well, next 2 sentences. Rams and hammers were beating against it. It cracked and staggered back, and the opening grew suddenly wide. Rams and hammers. is just, that's kind of the rhyme there is sort of lovely. And then I particularly like cracked and staggered back. You've got crack and back there with staggered in the middle. And so you've got crack, staggered, the CR and the ST, right? So you've got you've still got lots of sort of plosives going on there. Staggered. Staggered is one of those words that, like, the more you think about it, the more onomatopoetic it almost begins to sound, right? The word stagger almost sounds like the thing. Yes, Green Great Dragon, staggered sounds like the door is doing the action. Yes. I think that, first of all, yes, Nancy, that's exactly what I was just going to say. You don't see inanimate objects stagger very often. Yes, it's a strange phrase. It cracked and staggered back is a strange way to describe what the door is doing, right? I mean, that the door might crack, okay. But stagger, again, that's weird. Or it's unusual, that is to say. You get the repetition of the vowel, right? Ah, 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 cracked, staggered, back. Yes, and the opening grew suddenly wide. Yes, Jackie, noticed that first we're personifying the door, and then it's almost like you're personifying the opening, right? The opening is growing. It's really fun, and I love the balance, the way that his unusual imagery, the unusual sort of personification of the door, the idea of the door staggering, but the way that he emphasizes it with the particular pattern of sounds, all of the plosive consonants, C, K, well, K, right? K in crack, T in staggered, the G in staggered, B and K again. So there are two. D is technically a plosive as well, but staggered at the end, it's less plosive when it comes to the end of the word, right? But all three of those words have two plosives with the ass sound in between. Cracked, stag, back. But notice how there's a kind of a symmetry there, because crack and back are exact rhymes. And then the third one in the middle has two syllables instead of one. Cracked, staggered, back. It's just both the sound consistency of those patterns, those plosive, plosive pattern, and the rhythm of it as well. Notice it's perfectly iambic. It cracked and staggered back. The whole first half of that sentence is iambic trimeter, right? 3 perfect iambic beats. Yeah, Eric was just in the middle of pointing that out. Yeah, Eric, if we had the it, right, it's perfectly iambic. Yeah. And then notice how he changes the pacing right away. Having had this really strongly emphasized pacing of his sounds and syllables, it cracked and staggered back. Now look what happens. And the opening grew suddenly wide. And the opening grew. It's not iambic anymore. Right now it flows differently in these more open, like we were all plosives and back of the throat sound, right? Back of the mouth sound. And now we've got opening, grew. Think of what your mouth does when you say grew, right? Very different from crack. Yes, the vowel sounds are very different, Alexandra. The opening grew suddenly wide, right? Yeah. It's just, this is the kind of thing, like, if his composition here is like an improving musician, this is his instrument, right? Tolkien was extremely conscious and very interested in what your mouth does, right? It's this is why I always say you can't just, when you're looking for alliteration and things like that. And I think, by the way, one of the reasons that most people miss all this, one of the reasons that most people miss all of the things that Tolkien is doing with sounds in his prose, is that they're reading it with their eyes and you can't see it. That sentence doesn't jump out to your eyes. I mean, the two halves of it are quite balanced, right? But when you read it out loud and you read it slowly and you repeat it, right, multiple times, and you can feel it in your mouth, you can feel what Tolkien's doing, right? It cracked and staggered back, and the opening grew suddenly wide. Hear the difference? It's so cool. Yes, lines can alliterate to the eyes. And Jackie, I'm sure Tolkien was there talking about Old English verse and that kind of thing. And yes, it can alliterate to the eyes. But many of the effects that Tolkien seems to love are really about not just... What I love about It Cracked and Staggered Back is not just the sound. It's almost a tactile thing, right? You can feel it. You can feel that if you say it slowly, aloud, in a place where no one is going to be overhearing you and thinking you're strange, and you say it multiple times, you can feel the difference. You can feel it in your mouth. It's like using a different sense. It's not just an eye versus ear thing. It's tactile in your mouth. And yes, Gildaloin, the stress patterns are really striking. The opening grew suddenly wide. Yes. And I think that this kind of thing, Tolkien just loves, right? Arrows came whistling in, but struck the northern wall and fell harmlessly to the floor. Again, just the shape of that sentence. Arrows came whistling in. The sibilance there, the S at the end of arrows, and then picked up immediately by whistling, right? Arrows came whistling in, but struck the northern wall and fell harmlessly to the floor. The fell to the floor, right? That little, that's almost like the F's are to this sentence what a rhyming couplet at the end of a stanza, like of a Shakespearean sonnet is, right? Do you see what I mean? It signals. By the way, this was my favorite discovery when I was preparing my the rap talk that I gave at Mythmoot and at Osmoot, was when I was talking about the poetics of hip-hop and comparing them to Tolkien's poetics. Rappers do it too. That is, I noticed several rappers. I noticed it first in Rakim, one of my OG classics in the hip-hop genre. Rakim he does like this whole series of, of bars on the same sound patterns. repeating it many, many times, polysyllabic rhymes and stuff. And then he shifts to a different set of sounds. But when he shifts, he tends to signal that transition with an alliterative cluster. It was so cool when I noticed that. Anyhow, okay. Okay. Arrows came whistling in, but struck the northern wall and fell harmlessly to the floor. There was a horn blast and a rush of feet, and orcs one after another leaped into the chamber. Yes. Good. Eric is noticing that the arrows have agency too. And notice this is part of the larger pattern that we've been seeing throughout this entire description. Remember, part of the psychological effect that he has been creating in this entire sequence has been all of this. Even when he's not using the passive voice, he's tending to use indirect speech. Like the sounds are heard, right? Their feet are hurrying down the corridor, that kind of thing, right? Here, there was a crash on the door. He doesn't say they started beating on the door or something. The orcs started beating on the doors. They don't know, right? Once again, what's happening on the other side of the door, we can only guess at, because of course the company can only guess at it. There was a crash was followed by crash after crash. Then, like the conclusion, right? Then, like they deduce rams and hammers were beating against it. It cracked. Now we shift to the personification of the door. What's happening to the door? Or what is the door doing? It cracked and staggered back. And then, Eric, as you say, the arrows start acting. Arrows came whistling in. Notice once again, what he keeps avoiding is a straightforward subject, verb, object, right? Orcs shot arrows in through the door, right? Through the gap. No, the arrows just come whistling in. So it's all the action of the arrows. And even the sort of seemingly, well, not necessarily irrelevant, but less critically important at the moment. You know, like you can imagine kind of staring at the arrows as they come in and hit the wall and fall harmlessly to the floor, just kind of staring at the arrows. I have to imagine that the hobbits in general are kind of shell-shocked right here, because they've not seen very much combat, right? Remember, they didn't do anything except stand back to back in the wolf fight. But yeah. And yes, this is the first time we've ever seen orcs. Yes. Oh, that's really interesting. Eric is getting into the metrics of the different sentences. Arrows came whistling in. I didn't notice that. You're right, that is dactylic. But struck the northern wall, shifts back to iambic, and fell harmlessly to the floor. It's a little bit anapestic, if you don't stress fell, which you pretty much would, and fell harmlessly to the floor. Yeah, he's not just, he's not being rhythmical. He's just varying his rhythms, again, within sentences. And I think it's, anapest. Unstressed, stressed, unstressed. Think Dr. Seuss. Think the Grinch is an anapest, right? But the Grinch, right? Just think, but the Grinch. Yeah, that's anapest. Yeah. So, but it's such an interesting, again, like Do I think that he was trying that? Like, first I'll do dactylic and then I'll switch to... No, he's just doing what sounds right. But what is it that sounds right? Right? It turns out that what it is that sounds right is, how does he change his pacing? He changes his pacing by changing the rhythm of the words. The one thing, Eric, that you can clearly see, that I think you're clearly pointing out, that sentence, the arrows sentence, has 3 parts, clearly, right? Arrows came whistling in, but struck the northern wall and fell harmlessly to the floor. And what Eric is pointing out is that the first and third parts of the sentence are in a 3-beat rhythm. But the middle part, but struck the northern wall, is perfectly iambic. Right? So he goes 3, 2, 3 here. And the effect of that is the arrows are moving quickly. Arrows came whistling in, but struck the northern wall. Hear how it slows down? Like as we watch the arrows come to a stop, and we're kind of staring at the arrows striking, doing nothing, accomplishing nothing, right? Striking the northern wall, and fell harmlessly to the floor. But struck the northern wall. Yeah. Anyway, yes, beats per foot. It is 3 beats, 3 iambs, but yes, I mean beats per foot. I mean moving from a triplet pattern to a duplet pattern is what I mean. So it's a shift of, it's almost like a shift in time signature, if you want to think about it that way. If the musical vocabulary helps you better than the poetic vocabulary, it's like shifting time signature between first section, second section, third section of that sentence. Shifting from 3/4 to 4/4 back to 3/4, basically. Anyway, so and again, like, did Tolkien plot that out? No, he didn't plot that out. But we can nevertheless see how he wanted to create an effect, and this is how he created it, right? This is what that effect looks like, right, when it's at home, when you break it down. There was a horn blast and a rush of feet, and orcs one after another leaped into the chamber. Notice again, just thinking rhythm now, that last sentence. He ceases to do, there was a horn blast and a rush of feet. Do you hear how we get horn blast, those 2 stressed monosyllables in a row, and then rush and feet? There was a horn blast and a rush of feet, and orcs one after another leaped into the chamber. And of course, yes, we get the feet again. This is the fourth appearance of the feet doing things independently, right? This is, I think, maybe not our final. We'll have to keep watching the recurrence of the feet, right? Our good friends, the rushing feet. But yeah, there was a horn, and once again, and notice again the grammatical structure. Again, it's not passive voice exactly, but it's that same, I'm not describing a person doing an action. I'm just describing actions happening. There was a horn blast and a rush of feet. And now finally, for the first time in the entire paragraph, we get someone doing something. That's the reveal. And orcs, one after another, leaped into the chamber. Orcs leaped. There it is. That's the first time in this whole sentence, this whole paragraph, we've gotten a person doing something. And yes, Gildaluin, the effect is not an omniscient narrator, but a description of what the company see. And not just of what they see. I mean, of course, it's what they hear. But it's not just, it's like of their experience. Not just what, restricting the description to what is available to their senses, which it is doing, right? But it's also, that's how it creates, as I mentioned before, the psychological effect, right? we get the sense of helplessness of them standing there in the room waiting for death, waiting for the grisly death that came to Balin's company in that room under these circumstances. They are coming. We cannot get out, right? That sense of being trapped, that sense of being helpless. And all of these statements of indirect action. There was a crash. Arrows came whistling. There was a horn blast and a rush of feet. All of those contribute to that sense of help. Of the actions aren't passive. It's not. Most of them aren't in the passive voice, but they are. The company are passive. They can do nothing but stand listening to these terrifying sounds happening. This thing unfolding, right? And that is just it creates a really cool effect. Yes, it dramatically increases the feeling of helplessness. Alexandra, I think that's exactly it. And yes, Jackrabbit, I was just going to say this. We are told nothing at all about what the orcs look like. Nothing. Orcs, one after another, leaped into the chamber. How big are they? What weapons are they fighting with? What of anything do they look like? What color is their skin? What color are their eyes? What do they have hair? Like, do they have scales? The troll had scales. Do they have scales? Like, we don't know. We don't know. Tolkien doesn't think that that's important to tell us. We will get some more details in the next paragraph. Johnny, you're right. Right, Druid's Fire wants to know if they have toes. George MacDonald readers want to know. Right. But yeah, we don't know. We don't know. The important thing here is that Tolkien didn't think that was important. Right. He doesn't. He doesn't. We will get some details in a bit. And yes, Alexandra, I do think that it is it leads to the sense of like the overwhelming moment, right? If he were to have paused here and given us a whole paragraph describing the orcs, right? That would have not only abstracted us from the moment in order to contemplate the way that orcs look, but it would even have implied a kind of abstraction from the moment on the part of the company, the observers, the hobbits, which surely doesn't fit, right? Yeah, it's all in the immediacy of their shock, and they're orcs. And yes, several people were talking about liking that phrase, one after another, right? This functionally infinite number immediately followed up. How many there were, the company could not count. Notice how there's our first set of alliterative things in the second paragraph. Company could not count. But I really, again, I love how that works. It's not just, hey, there is alliteration. Like, the same sound is happening. Yeah, but what sound? The K sound, right? Again, with the plosives. Again, with the, and not just that. C-O, right? Company. The C with a short O. Company could not count. How many there were, the company could not count. the repetition of the plosives at the end, like that, and it's like stopping the idea, right? How many there were, the company could not count. Like that's impossible, right? And the chopping up of the chopping up of the sounds there at the end are really kind of interesting that way. Oh, sorry, I have this. Who was it who just came in? Oh yeah, Rebecca. Hey, good to see you, Rebecca. And sorry, Rebecca, I saw your comment, your greeting when you came in. And this phrase you used has been tickling the back of my mind ever since. You were listening to a podcast finale? What's that? You mean like some people make podcasts that end? I never even thought of that. Sorry, just that phrase kind of jumped out at me. I'm like, yeah, wow. Strange world. Anyway, sorry. Yeah, that's not in my vocabulary. But anyway, when it's about a TV show and you've done all the episodes, well, you obviously didn't spend enough time talking about the episodes. Seriously. But anyway, is Riddles in the Dark still ongoing? Well, in a sense, JJ, in the sense that it kind of morphed into film. Yeah, it kind of is in its way. We did change the name when we changed the focus, but anyway, sorry. That just kind of jumped out at me. Okay. The affray was sharp, but the orcs were dismayed by the fierceness of the defense. Notice how even here, there's a turnabout. The fierceness of the defense is also, it's the same kind of, how do I want to say it, depersonalized statement that he was making. Like there was a horn blast and a rush of feet, right? There was a fierce defense, right? They were dismayed by the fierceness of the defense. The defenders themselves now, they're not going to be left out of it for long. It transitions into the things that many of the individual peoples actually did, right? So it's not like it's taking that away, but it isn't where it starts. The orcs have been the ones who have been doing the things that are happening to the company. The company has been passive. The company has been waiting in fear and dread. And all of a sudden things reverse. The orcs come in and encounter a fierce defense. Exactly. Defense is a noun instead of an action by the company. Yeah, exactly. I'm still trying to resist calling them the Fellowship, because that's not. Notice that's not what they're called. They're not the Fellowship of the Ring. They're the Company of the Ring. Yeah. Anyway. Yes, and Eric points out that because for the hobbits, the defense started without them. As far as we can see, yes. Yes. Then we get the reference to the people. Legolas shot two through the throat. Gimli hewed the legs from under another that had sprung up on Balin's tomb. Boromir and Aragorn slew many. When 13 had fallen, the rest fled shrieking. We get the impression that the hobbits haven't done anything. Now, Frodo had his moment with the troll's foot, right? But it sounds like Boromir and Aragorn slew many. Legolas got 2, Gimli got 1. That leaves 5 each for Aragorn and Boromir, right? I mean, it sounds like that's what just happened there, right? When 13 had fallen, the rest fled shrieking, leaving the defenders unharmed except for Sam, who had a scratch along the scalp. A quick duck had saved him, and he had felled his orc, a sturdy thrust with his barrow blade. So Sam slew one too. Yes, Tatterdash, you are right. He does love the word hue. Tolkien uses that word a lot. Gimli hewed the legs from under another. One for the duck, Mudmore. Yeah. Jackrabbit, I agree with you. Jackrabbit is feeling that when 13 had fallen, the rest fled shrieking, has the rhythm of an Old English poetic line with the caesura in the middle and the alliteration on 2 and on beat 2 and 3. When 13 had fallen, the rest fled shrieking. Yeah. Nancy, I agree. That is really interesting. Hang on a second. Eric is making an etymological point, which is interesting. Hew is the Old English word. Cut is from Old Norse. That's cool. Hew is used 4 times in the Fellowship of the Ring, and hewn is used 6 times. Yeah, good. Yeah, thanks, JJ. Yeah, it is definitely a word that he likes. And I think not only is hew a good Old English word, right, a good Anglo-Saxon word, but I think that he likes. The fun thing about hew is it has functionally no consonants. The total lack of plosives in it. I mean, it's a single syllable word, which is almost all vowel sounds. You get the H, right? You get the but hew. There's something almost onomatopoetic about it, right? Just like as if it describes the swoosh of something in the air, right? Hew, very different from smote or smite. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I think the intrinsic interest of the sound there. Again, it's like extemporaneous music or something like that, right? When you have things available to you, right? Other words available to you. You could say hit, you could say cut, you could say smite, or you could say hew. And you hear how different that sounds, right? If that's the effect you want, you go with that one, right? Yes. Yes, hue and cry is spelled differently, I believe. And hewn is even better. Yes, I agree. Hewn, to take hue and then just end it with a nasal like that, with the N. Really cool. But of course, like, also remember to shift my metaphors for a moment. I've been using musical metaphors. Let me shift for a moment to a visual art metaphor, and thinking about the different colors that Tolkien has on his palette, right? That he can reach for at different times. Remember that Tolkien is not just thinking about the rhythm and sound of words. He's also thinking about things like he's also thinking about etymology as well. That's why I was really glad that Eric brought that up, because oh man, notice several people looking up different uses of the word hue. Stun Duck was talking about they hewed Hama. And then Jackie was quoting, his hand still clasped the red arrow, but his head was hewn off. Notice how both of those, like the alliteration that he's also using there, again, like the sensitivity to the sounds there. But in any case, the point I was making, though, to Tolkien, he was very sensitive, not just to the like objective rhythm and sound of the words and thinking about these things like the vowel sound of hew, Gimli hewed, the short I in Gimli against the long vowel of hew, the long diphthong there. Hewed the legs. But also, Tolkien was very aware, much more aware than I believe any of us are. Some of you are undoubtedly closer to Tolkien's perceptions of this than I, but he was also very aware of the texture that etymology of words provided. His conscious choices to use words that came from Anglo-Saxon instead of words that came from Latin through French. Never forget the Norman Conquest, right? But anyway, yeah, I mean that, like, he was very sensitive to that, the texture that the linguistic context of a word would give to things. So yeah, I mean, he was very was very conscious of those things. And so there definitely are moments, no question in my mind, that there are moments, probably many moments, when Tolkien chooses one synonym instead of another because of, like, he's like, no, I want a Norse word there, right? Or no, I want an Old English word there. Or at moments, no, I want a French word there. It happens. Don't say it never happens, because it does. It's not common, but there are moments when he reaches for it. Yeah. And that's, Golady, that's a really interesting example, right? Golady says argent versus silver, right? Yeah. All of us can, I think, feel it in some ways, right? Like you can feel some kind of difference between like a Latinate word and a Germanic word, basically. Tolkien was just much more tuned in to that kind of thing than we are. And I do believe, I do not think that Tolkien was exaggerating when he said there are over 1 million words in The Lord of the Rings, and I have considered each one of them. He said that in one of his letters. And I've just been rereading. I've been doing a reread of Tolkien's letters recently, and he said that not only at the end when he had finished it and revised it, but he said it earlier on. He said it early on too, in the early, like in 39, when he was still sending drafts of the chapters he had so far and desperately hoping to get The Lord of the Rings published by Christmas in 1939, right? Not realizing that he was not yet even a quarter of the way through the book, in fact. But anyway, in one of those earlier letters too, he talks about having carefully considered each word. And I think that that's, when he says that, I do believe that this is one of the things that he's thinking about. Letter 35. Thank you, Jackie. I need to be able to, that makes perfect sense, because that's, I think I just listened up through 40A today. So it's one I read recently. Yeah. Now, I said we're given the impression that the fighting is all being done by the warrior boys. Legolas, Gimli, Boromir, Aragorn. We don't hear anything that Gandalf does. We don't hear anything that the hobbits do until after the action is over. It's like we turn and see Sam there. Oh, by the way, and sorry, Nancy, you had mentioned ages ago that about 13 seeming a surprisingly precise number. It certainly contrasts very pointedly. In a paragraph which began with saying that the company could not count them, we then get the very specifically counted total of 13 corpses, right? So, Johnny, clearly they started being able to count when they were lying inert on the floor, right? The corpses do hold still. Yeah, it's easier to count those, clearly. But again, I think that the impression that this gives me is this being told from the point of view of the Hobbit observers who are primarily observing this fight. Just as we got, remember the effect with the arrows. Remember Eric's observation about the rhythm of that sentence and how "but struck the northern wall" changes the pace. This sense of hearing arrows and then seeing them hit against the wall and watching them to the, like, just kind of staring after the arrows in wonder and terror, right? The hobbits are watching this stuff unfold, and now they're watching corpses and counting them, right? There are 13 dead orcs lying around here, right? More orcs than their total are of the company, right? But then we turn and notice Sam. The rest fled shrieking, leaving the defenders unharmed, except for Sam, who had a scratch along the scalp. And by the way, anybody who's ever had a scratch along the scalp, what does Sam look like right now? If Sam has a scratch along the scalp, yeah, his face is a mass of blood, is what he looks like, a bloody mess. Absolutely. Scalp wounds bleed like nobody's business. Scalp wounds bleed profusely. Like scarily, really. Scarily, because if you're not used to it, it can be kind of terrifying, like, especially if it's like your kid who like cuts their head and blood is like gushing down their face, right? It's scary. Yes. So even if it's not a serious wound, the scalp is, what is the phrase my wife would use? Highly vascular. That's the phrase she would use. And so it bleeds a lot. So yes. So if Sam has a scratch along the scalp, Sam's face is going to be a mass of blood. He's going to have like blood streaked all the way down his face. Presumably good red hobbit blood, not black orc blood on his face. But yeah. So no, Sam is not going to look unharmed in the moment, right? I mean, again, anyone who has experiences, doubtless Aragorn, Boromir, Gandalf, all are going to see where his wound is and be like, oh yeah, it's lots of blood, but it's okay. His brown eyes are still clearly visible. Fencing Frog, or Alexandra, you're right. But I almost, I don't know, noticed more, right? You notice his brown eyes, right? With the blood all around both sides. Yeah, Jackrabbit, that's a really great point. Notice, not only does he not actually describe the bloody mask that Sam's face must have been at this time, but he doesn't describe any of the blood. As Jackrabbit says, the room had to have been awash in blood. I mean, Gimli hewed the legs from under another? Do you know how much blood would be pumped out of the femoral artery? Assuming orcs have femoral arteries. The orcs that are shot through the throat, lots of blood there. I mean, this would have been extremely gory. And none of that is described. The action is described. The brutal strokes are described. Blood, not described. And that's, I think that's interesting. By the way, the other thing I think is interesting about Sam's doubtless extremely bloody scratch along the scalp is that, notice how he's going to have in a way a matching wound to Frodo. We're not going to get there for a while. So remembering ahead for a little bit to the next chapter, when Aragorn goes running off and forgets that Sam and Frodo are wounded. Both Frodo and Sam have something in common, and that is that they have wounds that look way worse than they are, right? Frodo has a wound which should be a severe wound, but was prevented from being, or he will have soon. That's the next slide, in fact. He will have a wound which should have skewered him, right? But turned out not to be that bad because of his mail shirt. Sam has a wound which doubtless looks really bad, but isn't actually that bad, right? So both of them are less injured than they appear, right? And that's, I think, an interesting kind of connection between their two wounds. Yeah. Anyway, the description of Sam's eyes. No, wait, before I get there, let's go back to the duck. The quick duck. And yes, it is funny to think of that in a more literal sense, as if a quick duck had rushed in and saved Sam's life. But a quick duck had saved him. This is another moment that the texture of that phrase, quick duck, not only do we have that K repetition like cracked back, quick duck, there's something a little bit funny about that, even if you're not picturing a swift moving waterfowl, right? But there's something funny about that phrase. I mean, there's something amusing about that phrase, like not weird, but slightly comical. There's a shift in tone here, it seems to me. A quick duck had saved him. I mean, you don't talk about Could you imagine describing Boromir making a quick duck? I mean, I'm not saying he would never do it. Doubtless, Boromir has ducked many a time in battle. But would you use that phrase to describe a motion of Boromir? It's not like in his idiom, if you see what I mean. Right? Right, he would be rapid reposturing. Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't whereas it's all of a sudden the diction sounds hobbity again. A quick duck had saved him, and he had felled his orc like a young tree that he had a mind to fell, right? A quick duck had saved him, and he felled his orc. Felled, that elevates again, right? Felled is more like it is like felling a tree. Yes. But yeah, Bjorning was pointing out the other verbs. Legolas shot, Gimli hewed, Boromir and Aragorn slew, Sam ducked. Right? Hear the difference? But Sam felled his orc. That fits. Right? Shot, hewed, slew, felled. Yeah, totally. Boromir would fell orcs all day long. Right? So you've got the two halves there. A quick duck had saved him, semicolon, and he had felled his orc. It's like we get the hobbitish description of his action, and then Sam graduates into a more epic register, right? And he had felled his orc. That begins to sound like a pronouncement, right? Like something you would say at an award ceremony. He felled his orc. Sam is taking his place among the epic heroes here. Oh, interesting. Jackie was looking it up. Bill Ferny ducks too. He fails to duck. That is, he ducked too late, and Sam hits him with the apple. Yeah. Yep. Good. Yeah. Ardent Crayon was thinking about that one too. Yes. Okay, so I'm not, oh yeah, Ardent Crayon mentioned it first. That's awesome. Yeah, no, that's great. Do you hear the difference in diction, in tone between the first before the semicolon and after? But notice then we're not done. Then we get a colon. A sturdy thrust with his barrow blade. Sturdy is a kind of a hobbitish word too. Again, you wouldn't call Boromir sturdy. Boromir the warrior is my my test case, right, for high warrior idiom. Sturdy. Sturdy is a sturdy thrust. Sounds like more of a hobbit compliment. A sturdy thrust with his barrow blade. I agree, Jackrabbit. Boromir's thrust might have been doughty instead of sturdy. Yeah, I agree. And yes, Alexandra, the punctuation is really interesting. A quick duck had saved him, semicolon, and he had felled his orc, colon, a sturdy thrust with his barrow blade. Notice how we get two independent clauses, the quick duck and he had felled his orc. Quick Duck had saved, he had felled. But then we get a colon and a phrase, not a clause, no verb. A sturdy thrust with his barrow blade. We could have gotten a third recap. A Quick Duck had saved him, and he had felled his orc. Semicolon again, or new sentence, or dash. He had stabbed it with his barrow blade, right? Sturdily, presumably, right? That's interesting, Kurtzimus. I like that observation. Kurtzimus says that sturdy sounds like a blue collar action. Yeah. Yes. Eric points out that sturdy is from Old French. There you go. Right there in front of you. Yeah, that's interesting. French is allowed. He does it. So is defense, by the way. I mean, it is not true that Tolkien doesn't use French words. Anyway. Yeah. Right. Bjorning says it's modern English. That's the real enemy. Yeah, in a sense. Adam, I also get the same impression. Adam says, I picture him ducking and extending his arm so the orc runs onto his blade, a stop thrust in fencing. Yes, I agree. I agree. Yes, Jackie. Sturdy is used 4 times in the Scouring of the Shire. I was thinking of that too. I associate the word sturdy in Tolkien with the Scouring of the Shire. It's a Hobbit word. Don't they use the word adjective sturdy to modify the noun hobbitry? If I remember correct, we have enough sturdy hobbitry now when they're counting their troops and thinking about battling the ruffians. Yeah. It is a blue collar word. It's a Hobbit word. Yeah, exactly. Yes. Anyway, I agree. I picture the same thing. The stop thrust as well. It's a sturdy thrust with his barrow blade. Again, Sam doesn't go... Sam's not swashbuckling here, right? He's not got much learning with a sword. He's not an experienced warrior. He doesn't... But an orc is rushing at him, so he knows enough to duck under the slash of the orc's sword and stick out his sword so that the orc who's charging at him rushes onto it, right? That seems to me the overwhelmingly likely explanation of what happened. And notice how that paints Sam. He is sturdy, right? He's not heroic. He's not, leaping and spinning and he's but what he is doing is he's standing firm. He is sensibly getting his head out of the way, and then he is putting up a sturdy resistance against the orc and the orc's own aggression. The orc's own aggression impales itself. Yeah. Yes. And then a fire was smoldering in his brown eyes that would have made Ted Sandyman step backwards if he had seen it. And this is the strangest sentence in the entire passage, I think. That sentence is surely the least necessary sentence in this entire paragraph, right? We get this moment to see what this occasion has done to Sam. A fire was smoldering in his brown eyes that would have made Ted Sandyman step backwards if he had seen it. Now, I've been avoiding until we got to this sentence the very interesting question which several of you have raised already, and that is who wrote this. And I agree with the premise on the one hand that Frodo seems likely to have written it, as Sam is less likely to have spent so much time on himself. However, how much does Frodo know about Ted Sandyman? Frodo wasn't there. We've heard Sam arguing with Ted Sandyman, but Frodo wasn't there. Does Frodo even drink at that inn? We don't even know that for sure. Gilgalady, I agree. Why would Frodo even think of Ted? It would be a weird thing for, even if, and it's possible, of course, that Frodo knows that Sam has a kind of rivalry with Ted Sandyman back in the Shire. It's possible that Frodo's aware. We don't know for sure that Frodo knows that. But it's possible that he does. But even if he did, would he write it? Would he say this exactly? I don't know. The reference to Ted Sandyman, the function of this, of course, is explicitly, with the reference of Ted Sandyman, we are explicitly reminded of Sam's earlier nonviolent confrontation with Ted Sandyman and the Green Dragon, back in chapter 2. Ted Sandyman was his rival. Now, we don't know that they were rivals in any other sense, other than that Ted is a jerk and Sam doesn't seem to like to stand for it, right? Sam's a jerk and a blowhard. Kurtzmas is wanting to talk about who wrote chapter 2. Not going to sidetrack onto that. Anyway, that moment is being recalled by the reference to Ted. And I think that clearly, what we're getting is a juxtaposition, right? A juxtaposition between, we're asked to remember Sam arguing with Ted Sandyman and the Green Dragon back in chapter 2, and to think about how far away they are from that. Here's Sam Gamgee, against whom Ted had scored a point, remember, in the debate. Now we have Sam, his face dripping with his own blood, his hand running with the blood of his enemy, having received a wound and felled his orc. And I did pass over, and I saw a couple of people write to emphasize it, the possessive there. He's his orc. This is the orc that attacked Sam and injured him, right? But he got his orc. He felled his orc. And yeah, Jackrabbit, I agree that it's implying how much worse Ted Sandyman would have done in this situation. On the one hand, so we've got a couple things, right? Sam and Ted were rivals in some sense, right? Were antagonists, at least. And now we have Sam with a very different antagonist, right? Ted Sandyman has been replaced by this savage orc that was just trying to kill him, but whom Sam killed instead. So there's one juxtaposition with Ted Sandyman, but I agree with you, Jackrabbit. There's also, like, how would Ted Sandyman respond in this instance? Like, who really, of those two antagonists, which one is the sturdier, right, of the two of them? And I think it's pretty clear. And yes, Kurtzimus, it is an inherited rivalry, because old Sandyman and the Gaffer are antagonists too. And that's not just on that one occasion, because remember that we are told that the Gaffer that evening was disliking the Miller even more than usual, right? So it was usual for him to dislike the Miller. Yeah. Bjorning, I do agree that that is the overall effect of this sentence, that Sam is grown up, that Sam is not in the same story anymore. He's not in the same place anymore. He's not in the same story anymore. We're going to see Sam coming back to the Shire wearing ironmongery and having grown, right? Since he left the Shire. This is a moment when a little spotlight is being shown on the process of that growth, right? Yeah. Eric, I agree. Ted represents the old type of conflict, the kind of the worst conflict that that Sam had before, right? But Sam has now, he's transcended that. He's grown up. He's bigger than the small concerns of the Shire in some ways, or he's experienced things that are bigger. Yeah. Yes. Good. That's really interesting, Nerdosapiens. The ponies were described as, so there have been two other uses of sturdy. The ponies were sturdy, and the Bjornings. Frodo learned that Grimbeorn the Old, son of Beorn, was now the lord of many sturdy men. Yeah. Well, the Bjornings are so blue collar, they don't even have collars. Right? So, yeah. Yes, Gimli will be described as sturdy later also. Yeah, they're bear collar. Yeah, I agree. All right. Now, but anyway, back to the authorship question, the authorship question. It is possible. I mean, by the time that Frodo is writing this, he will have heard many accounts. I agree that if he wrote chapter 2, he could easily write this too, referring back to it. It is possible. The idea that, there was the theory floated that maybe Eleanor included it later on. That would be interesting. Would be an interesting touch. I think it's likelier that Frodo would have been a little bit closer to it. But I do like the Eleanor suggestion is fun. I certainly agree it's not Sam. The one way in which it does make sense for Frodo, I will say, is that Frodo, if we imagine that Frodo is the one who is the perceiver, right, of all the things here, right? If this all is more or less Frodo's point of view, if Frodo is the one counting corpses here in this room so far, anyway, that all makes sense. But if we see him turning and looking at Sam, and especially seeing this vision of Sam that we're sort of recreating here, right? Sam, his face streaked with blood, his arm covered in the blood of orcs, red blood on his face, black blood on his hand, a fire in his eyes, right? From the moment of his triumph in combat, that Frodo would be particularly struck by this, that this transformation of Sam would represent for Frodo a really significant turning point, a way in his first perception of how this journey has changed them. Sam, there would be nothing more familiar, more domestic than Sam, right? Sam would not only be as familiar to him as the furniture of Bag End, but almost in a similar kind of way. Like Sam is used to seeing around the house, right? I mean, there's nothing that he has had with him on this journey is a clearer, firmer reminder to Frodo of the peaceful, innocent days in the Shire than Sam being there with him. And now that familiar, domestic, peaceful has been transformed, right? And I think that's the moment that's really being emphasized here. And I agree, Ithilien, it is very possible that Sam could well have written the account, probably did write the account of the conversation in the Green Dragon. But Frodo may well have heard of it, right? He might have written it himself. He might have heard about it from Sam. But in any case, that Frodo could editorially be connecting the dots there. I think it's possible. Yes. Mrs. Manrique, Sam is becoming a warrior, which is usually reserved for higher class nobility. I agree. But also remember, it was prophesied by Frodo. When Sam, right? First he was a conspirator, then he was a jester, and he'll end by becoming a wizard or a warrior. Remember? There he is. Look. Frodo looks and he's like, oh my goodness. He's become a warrior. Right? Yes. Then we get Gandalf's, now is the time. Let us go before the troll returns. It was interesting, by the way, that the troll, Frodo stabbing it in the foot, led either to its income, like maybe the troll is off, writhing on the ground and holding his foot. As somebody who just experienced a foot injury of my own, I say it with feeling, right? Like I remember sitting on the ground, writhing and holding my foot. So maybe he was right. Well, I don't know if I would go so far as to say that he's like a soccer player. That seems a little bit extreme. But anyway. He's certainly lasting lame, Jackie, no question. But Gandalf fears that he's gonna make it back, right? Once the ref calls the penalty, he'll jump back up to his feet and start pushing the door in again. Let us go before the troll returns. So the orcs have broken and fled. And this might be their only chance to run. It's not an awesome chance to run, by the way. Aragorn was suggesting that they might still get a chance to flee. This isn't a great chance, because if the orcs come charging in right after, as indeed we'll see might well happen, the whole point was they didn't want to run down the steps and have the orcs chasing immediately behind them. And what kind of a head start are they going to get if they go and flee right now? Not very much, right? But I agree, fencing, it is a chance. And it is, as far as they know, the best chance that they're likely to get. Because maybe the orcs will be afraid to come back in the room for a little bit, and they'll get a chance to run. Little Room Johnny, I agree that it is interesting. Now is the time, not the time is come. Yes. That's because this is not like a moment foretold, right? This is an opportunity they were hoping for. But yeah, it's not his time is come, right? This is now is the time. But it's an interesting point of contrast to the much more portentous the time is come or the time is not come. Yes. This is more of a quick opportunity rather than a weighty occasion. Exactly, Kikokoedi. He doesn't say, this is our hour, right? Again, that's not, it's an interesting illustration because those things might sound in some sense like they're synonymous, but you can hear how, again, I wouldn't say, this is our hour. That wouldn't mean this, right? Or even this is our moment. Exactly. But yeah, Johnny, I agree. It's a good data point that Tolkien uses these phrases intentionally. Yes. Yes. And he emphasizes now by putting it first. Eric, I agree. Good. All right. Well, I'm late. I started late, so I went late. I'm not sorry. But we should end there. Tune in next time when Frodo gets stabbed. And we do get some orc description, as has been foreboded in our discussion tonight. So more action. More sudden and unexpected action next week, of which Frodo is the victim. So we will see. Tune in next time when Frodo gets stabbed, which is, Colin, to be perfectly frank, that is a depressingly unspecific. Poor Frodo gets stabbed quite a few times, right? So this is in fact the time in which Frodo doesn't get stabbed. In fact, right? Yeah. Anyway, okay. Thank you, everybody who's only joining us for our text discussion. And we will have at least a brief field trip this evening. Thanks very much, everybody. Yeah, Little Room Johnny is referring to my Bible podcast. I will say I'm still doing live broadcasts of that. My live time for the Bible study is Sunday evening at 8:00 Eastern. It's on the weekend, and so I'm traveling a lot, but hoping to be there this Sunday evening. But yeah. Anyway, yeah. I have a Slack for it, Eric. So if you let me know, I can add you to the Slack. All right. Thanks, everybody. So just send me if you're interested in that, send me an email and I'll try to take care of that. I'm running all around this week, but I'll try to take care of that. All right. Thanks, everybody. Let's do field trip time. Druid's Fire is going to join us for field trip.
Hello.
How are you this evening? How's the kitty doing?
Curl up, sleeping on a towel in a box on my desk here.
Still in the box, is it?
Yeah. Well, right now it's snoozing. It wasn't earlier.
Okay, I see.
He's so small.
Yes. Yes.
For context for everybody else, about a half hour, 45 minutes before the stream started, a rather nasty storm rolled through my area. Lots of lightning, major downpour. And this little kitten started howling their lungs out under the hedge below my great big window in the front of the house. So I was out in the lightning and downpour, crawling on the ground, rescuing this little kitten, who is now on my desk.
Yeah, it sounds like the beginning of a fantasy novel.
I know, right? The
Right.
kitten has already earned its own name. Storm Lost.
Okay.
Storm Lost.
Stormlock.
Storm for short. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, it sounds like, I mean, like that kitten is probably going to turn out to be like the lost heir of a kingdom somewhere.
Probably.
Presumably.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like it sounds like it's really likely.
Most likely, it is the lost kitten who's now found a home.
Yeah.
Either way, I'll see if I can get some time tomorrow to take it over to the vet and get it checked out and whatnot.
Yeah. Cool.
It's not a teensy little cat. I mean, it's small,
Oops.
but it's not a teensy.
I just came in with the wrong character. I'm in Grifflet here.
Oopsie doodle.
Hang on.
Why did Grifflet come online?
Sorry.
I mean, you could bring Grifflet if you wanted to. We don't care.
No, that was just a mistake.
We'd have to summon you though.
I was talking while I was on the load screen, so I wasn't. I went into autopilot.
I have done that many a time. Sometimes I click in the wrong server.
Yeah.
For those who play Lotra, by the way, the game will be down from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. tomorrow, while they migrate the Angmar server from New Jersey to Las Vegas and do a whole bunch of performance updates and shenanigans.
It's pretty quick work to go from New Jersey to Las Vegas.
This is true, especially since they have to get all of their stuff out of New Jersey by the end of the month, and they don't have any grace on that at all.
All right.
Let's get you in the raid.
Okay, yeah, let's get me in the raid, and then I'm gonna head. So we got the, yes, Nazarachem, because we're gonna do the Flaming Deeps next, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Gonna go
I
to
think
the south.
we're actually prepared to begin exploring the Flaming Deeps tonight.
True.
All right.
And if anybody needs a summons, I will be able to summon you.
Okay, I think there was one person who was not sure where we were headed, and so probably does not have this milestone.
Yes. They
Toradel, I think?
Yeah, they are new to our company.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, welcome, Toradel. So, all right. So, first of all, let's remember where we're starting here. And that is at the foot of the stairs in this really beautiful, like we said, this was the equivalent of like a big old train station atrium or something. This big junction of the ways that they built up in these beautiful and symmetrical ways. And then we came down here. Now, I never actually looked around here very much. This construction here is kind of interesting. So, all around is not only rough stone, but, yikes, almost fell off. That looks like lava down there, magma down there, right?
Yes, it is very warm around here.
Yeah, it's actually flowing. Okay, right. Yes, we could see it actually flowing. So this is built up like a platform. A platform in the middle of the magma field. Why would they do this? I mean, of course, like it's convenient to have a milestone and a stable master here, but and we can see that it's being used as a kind of way station for the Iron Garrison, who's currently, they've got some supplies stashed here, and they're looking at maps over here and all that kind of thing. So if I discovered this place down here, I would think the same thing. Like, here, let's use this as a kind of outpost. But my question is, what was it originally? It doesn't seem to me to have. I'm coming over here just to look at it from a distance here. It matches architecturally. Oh, it's got an upstairs. Well, no. You can't go up there, but it's got stuff on top. It's got pillars on top of it. And wall structure behind it. It doesn't seem... Well, no, that's not quite true. I was going to say it doesn't seem that it really fits in with the architecture of the fancy train station. But it is situated in relationship with it in that it is what you see when you come to the end of this long hallway, long, tall hallway underneath the arches that we were talking about. You come to the end and, well, it's not quite there. It's off to the side. Yeah, it doesn't really fit. You can see it a bit, but it's not really designed in concert with the symmetry of the fancy train station. Not that there are trains, but that was the image.
There could be trains.
That was the image that we kind of decided about that. No, but we haven't seen any tracks.
Maybe
so
a wagon, stagecoach.
Yeah. So it seems to be kind of detached from the overall design and layout. All I can guess, and we'll know better once we run around in it a little bit. This is a river of magma, lava. Which is it? I got corrected in my usage several times, and now I don't know how to even use it properly. It's lava when it comes out of the volcano, but it's magma when it's in the ground. Is that right?
If only we had a geologist in our company.
If only we had a geologist who could help us with this.
I believe, and please again correct me, that it is magma in the chamber. That's why it's a magma chamber.
Right.
And lava while it's flowing like a river.
Magma under the surface, lava on the surface. Okay. So this is magma still, then. Okay, so we have a little magma river. All right. Well, let's follow this road just a little bit.
Again, with the lack of OSHA compliance in terms of railings.
Who needs railings when you've got a bridge over a river of magma? What's the worst that could happen?
Well, this is definitely not a bridge over troubled water.
No, it is not.
Troubled magma, maybe.
Okay, so now we're going up into the face of a rough-hewn cliff. We've got statuary up there. Fun statuary. I don't think we've ever seen we've seen a crystal chandelier thing being hung like as if it were being held by, like from the hand of a statue, as if it were a lantern being held by the statue. But we've never seen something like this. It just attached to the bottom of a pickaxe.
Yeah, it's definitely weird.
That's kind of cute.
It is, honestly. If you had that on the bottom of an axe while you were flailing it around, you could do some extra damage. Probably 1d6.
And possibly to yourself.
Bludgeoning. Yeah, 1d6 bludgeoning. If you roll a nat 1, then you injure yourself.
Right, yeah, exactly.
No, I haven't been playing too much on Dungeons & Dragons Online lately.
Well, Sorry, I'm looking back at the...
But looking at the statues, I mean, the two hands on the same pickaxe, it's like two different tribes to me. That, you know, there's this fellowship going on here, pun intended. But I don't know. I'm looking at the symbols on their belts, but they seem to be the same symbols.
Right.
And they're both long beards with a similarly luscious beards going on here.
Yeah, it doesn't seem necessarily to be like inter-clan cooperation, but I agree. The general impression is certainly one of cooperation.
Maybe brothers or a brother and a sister?
right?
Or even two sisters. You know,
certainly
we don't know.
certainly the cooperation in work, not in battle, right? It's a tool, it's a mining tool that they're using, not a weapon. Yeah. These also, it's hard to, maybe we'll get a place where we can see them more clearly from the side. Yeah, hang on a second. Let's go over here for a minute. This little platform. Okay. Yes. All right. Well, this confirms my sense that these statues are quite different from other statues that we've seen. They're round. They're not like...
Yeah, the rounded.
Yeah, that's what I mean. They're not like blocky. Yeah, all the other statues have been blocky, often
You're right.
often in like alcoves and stuff, but they tend to be squarish. This is round. Look at its nose. Look at its little cheeks.
I mean, even like the statue over here behind us is that holding down this this other lantern. It
He's
seems,
round too.
I don't know. Yeah. Would this be a different era of building, I wonder?
Now he's...
What about the dude on top of this plinth with the hammer?
Yeah.
They all seem to be kings, though.
Now, these guys are in armor. Oh, yeah, right. I didn't see the guy with the hammer up there. But those guys over there...
We've seen that one before.
These guys are not in
more
armor.
square.
Yeah, we have. Seen the hammer guy, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, the style is different. The dress is different. They're not warriors in armor.
This guy's got like a series of pouches on their belt.
Yeah, he's got a belt.
Craftsman?
Yeah, he's got what looks like...
Batman's utility belt.
Maybe. He's like a leather apron or something. Leather gloves,
Yeah.
certainly.
Maybe like a quilted of some kind?
Yeah, again, I don't think it's armor. I think it's just work clothes.
And just like a bog standard skull cap, no crown, no pointies.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think he's wearing crown. He
feels-
might be
yeah, this
wearing
feels
some
like-
kind of helmet.
Yeah, that's what I mean about the skull cap.
Yeah, exactly. But again, I think it's I don't think it's military. I think it's... See, look, the dwarves don't disbelieve in all safety equipment, perhaps. He's got a little dwarven hard hat on over there.
Hard hat could work, yeah.
Amareya, that's one of the things that I'm wondering is the difference in style meant to reflect the fact that this is like a working class. It's a working dwarf, not a warrior dwarf. I don't know, these ones look a little more portly than the other statue, than I remember the other statues being, but maybe I'm wrong about that. Okay. So, just trying to get the overall layout. We got a little bit I only ran over here because I wanted to see those other statues better, but there's a lot going on here.
Yeah. So these two over the holding the shared pickaxe, they're kings. They got pointy crowns. You can also see them from this bridge as well.
I don't know. Are they?
Well, they got
Are those
pointy
crowns?
hats. Yeah.
I think they're hard hats. You think they're crowns?
Yeah. That's we'll see other king statues in other places in the game where it's clearly a Durin, so therefore king.
Maybe.
And pointy hat.
Maybe. The points, I
But
think,
you
aren't
haven't
on
been
their
there yet.
hats. So, because look, they've got the 3-peak thing on their shoulders.
Mm-hmm, they do.
But that in itself is pretty suggestive. Pretty Durinly, as you suggest. Huh. Tourdo, I agree. It is like the monumental statuary along the Anduin. And it's we haven't walked through. I mean, it is like the Argonath in that you have to walk right between them, right under them to come in.
It's also not a boundary to the land. I would expect something like this to be over the gates, east gates or west gates,
Right.
to say, hey, this is our kingdom, or hand held out or pickaxe held out saying, don't mess with us.
Well,
But
it
this just
is
like,
a boundary. It's the boundary of this place, Hadad Mazer. It's the boundary of the, here in the Flaming Deeps. Whatever this place over here was. I have to admit, I am quite surprised by what we're seeing over here. I didn't expect this is all built up. I thought it was going to be rough-hewn caves. I was ready for stark igneous stone over here. And instead we get this whole huge elaborate complex.
Yeah, this is clearly a crafting area of sorts, of some kind, because of just how much is built up around here. The fancy stairs. I'm sure there's many, many, many hidden doors all over the place. And sorry,
No doubt.
viewing.
Yeah. No, I'm surprised. I thought this might be I thought it might be a mining area. I thought it might be even a place like where they explored. I mean, like the River of Magma. I mean, look, what are you going to do with a River of Magma? I mean, you could use it for heat or whatever, I suppose, but still, like, it didn't seem like a great place to live. But yet, like, we're right above an oozing lake of magma right now. And yet, this is enormous. Okay. Yep, when we went over that hill, I was expecting to find a rough path down into a rough cave.
And you were surprised.
And I am surprised. And I remain surprised. And so...
If we look at the map, you can get a vague sense of what's here. And it's clearly not just random rock. There's some structures that we'll explore.
Yeah. No, it's... There's a bunch of stuff.
I wonder if this is like, the primary forges of, of Moria, because you want your forges to be very toasty.
Sure. Yeah, maybe. But I'm thinking again of Turadel's comment. It is like the Argonath because again, this passageway, up the stairs, like this is like a pass. This is a gateway into that other place. Okay, it's like this is not a, out here we have our big old train station crossroads, and that one now that thing where we got the milestone, that little platform down there, is beginning to look something like a porter's lodge or something.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, like some kind of guard post or something to protect the way up the mountain through the paths guarded by these statues. And then the great hall here opens before you.
I wonder if it was a toll booth.
Conceivably. It could have been. But yeah, I was not expecting this to lead to like a great city. I was expecting it to lead to rough stone and stuff. So next time we'll look around a little bit more here, see if we can get the lay of the land here a bit in this immediate area, try to understand the rationale of what's going on here with the bridges and the terraces and the columns and what's happening here. So yeah, we'll see if we can understand the rationale of this inner city a little bit more. But man, this is surprising. So we shall explore more of the surprise next time.
Indeed, we shall.
Very good. Thanks, everybody. Sorry for the relatively brief field trip here this evening, but we ended late, so good. There it is.
And it's fine. I have a rescue kitten who's currently munch on the food.
There you go. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Druid's Fire. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And we will hopefully see everybody again next week. Bye now.
Bye.